question everything.
Yeah.
Question what you believe, why you believe it. Is this real? What's the evidence to support it? I think that's such an important thing where it'll prevent you from getting too caught up in identifying your ego with something else again.
Welcome to the Multiple Truths podcast. We're your hosts, Holly and Brittany.
This is a space where we can come together healing in community, where we share our self-love journeys, insights, and wisdom.
A space with no hierarchy or judgment, fostering love, compassion, and respect, and where we honor our differences. With open minds and hearts, everyone's truth is welcome here. We are in this together. Let's dive into the episode.
Hello and welcome back to another episode. You are here with Brittany today, and I'm excited to introduce you to our guest. I am here with Michael Mayo, who is a medium. He's a psychic. He is an astrologer. He is also an author, a teacher, amongst other things. He's actually my teacher, so I'm excited to get in today. He has a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom to share with all of us. So without further ado, Michael, hello. Thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
Hi, Brittany. Thank you for having me on here. I'm really excited to be here. And thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to what we get to talk about today.
Yeah, we're going to get into a few different things. Michael, for those of you listening, as I mentioned, he's actually my mediumship mentor. He kind of brought me into the world. Him, along with Megan, my other mentor, brought me into the world of mediumship, and my development it's been a crazy wild journey, let's just say that. And a lot of people I didn't know this initially, and I learned this as I kind of got into the mediumship world. And I know this is no coincidence. When I started my development with Michael and Megan, my healing journey kind of like coincided with that coincidentally, which I know is not actually a coincidence at all. It was kind of like right at the beginning of my crazy wild journey. So I would love to ask you about that, Michael, about your healing, your mediumship, how you find the two coincide, or anything that you would want to talk about in that realm.
So with mediumship, one of the things that I think is the best gift that it gives us is it gives us an opportunity to get triggered. So when we go through mediumship, we are offering to the other person, hey, I'm going to do this miraculous thing right now. I'm not only going to contact spirits that I'm claiming exist, but I'm also going to be able to tell you all about that spirit and all about your life too. So you're putting yourself in this position where you're saying to someone else, like, hey, I can do this really, really magical thing. And believe me, and also pay me money. And so with those things together, even if you're not charging, with those things together, it causes you to trigger any sort of performance thing that you have, perfectionism, efforting, trying, like any part of yourself, that part that doubts and all that, it all comes up.
Mm.
And that level of triggering over and over and over and over and over gives you an opportunity to look at what are the things that are causing me to keep me from being vulnerable. That's literally what it is. Because what does perfectionism do? Perfectionism is you trying to appear or look a certain way so that you feel safe,
Mm-hmm.
right? You feel like you're not going to be judged, etc.
Yeah.
What does being down on yourself or hard on yourself, what does that do? That's you trying to preemptively tell someone else, no, don't worry, I got it. I'm going to talk shit on my own self because that way you don't have to. Right. So it's like all of these little things that we do that triggers these insecurities. And that is one of the best benefits I think you get from mediumship on a personal level of your development is you get an opportunity to face and meet yourself over and over and over and over and over until you deal with those things. And what I have found is the way that you do one thing is the way you do everything. So if you have perfectionism in your mediumship, you probably have perfectionism in your life too.
Mm-hmm.
And so by working on it in your mediumship, it can often bleed into your life and vice versa. It can go from your life to your mediumship. So that's one of the big things that I think healing, big things that can come from mediumship, the healing quality, the healing aspect of it. As far as like my own personal journey with my own healing, I think it's just been an unfolding process. I think I know a lot of people will talk about, the dark night of the soul and these really like intense healing processes. I can't say that I ever experienced that.
Mm,
I would say my healing has always been sort of incremental
mm,
as it relates to my experiences. Now, that being said, it's probably because I've done a shit ton of that
yeah,
very early on in my life.
yeah,
Right. So it's like I didn't have this buildup of a false sense of self that needs to die
mm,
and like me to rediscover,
yeah,
because I was already at a place where I had done a lot of that prior to getting into my
yeah.
spirituality.
I want to say something. I have full body chills as you're mentioning that. I love that you're bringing that up about not experiencing the dark night of the soul yourself, because there's so many different ways to grow, to evolve. You don't have to experience a quote unquote dark night of the soul to reach a certain level within yourself or whatever it may be. Personally, I experienced a dark night of the soul, and that it started when mediumship development started for me. And sometimes I'm like, okay, am I done it yet? Because it's been tower moment after tower moment for the last couple of years, and it's been hard. Like when I tell you the hardest things I've ever been through, it's been really hard. But my co-host Holly, her journey sounds more similar to yours in the sense where it's been more I forget the word that you used, but steady, if that makes sense. It wasn't like this big thing that's like whoosh,
Right.
like ego death, this and that. And I think that it's important to note that, because a lot of people just in, on the healing journey or whatever, I've heard people say like, oh, well, I haven't experienced that. Or there's this connotation where if you haven't experienced that, then you're, not. I don't know if I'm articulating that very well, but do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, for sure. I think what you're describing sounds like people think that if you did not experience, like there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to
Yeah.
do it, or that there's something missing, or and I think you talked about this podcast being describing many paths to the
Mm-hmm.
truth,
Mm-hmm.
and that is the reality. So like you may have experienced a dark night of the soul, but your earlier life might have been very different from mine.
Yeah.
Whereas like I know a little bit about your past, and you had this very clear sort of cut goal of like, this is how you live, this is how you are, this
Mm-hmm.
is, and when you start to break free from that, of course you're going to experience this really intense shift and change in your perspective and shift and change in your worldview, because you're undoing so much of that sort of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it all just depends on your own personal circumstances of what you're going to experience with that. I think a dark night of the soul often is related to, like you said, the ego death,
Yeah.
or like the false identities that we have
Mm-hmm.
dying off.
Yes. Yeah. And I had
And
a lot of those.
yeah. So I mean that's the thing. And like I was a gay man, or I am a gay man.
Mhm.
And so I had that experience
Mm.
like when I was in like high school or so, where
Wow.
it
Yeah.
was like, and I was like super born again Christian, was going to be a pastor, like all those sorts of things.
Mm.
That's when I had it. And then my mediumship came in right after that.
Wow,
So
chills.
I had that experience of like,
Mhm.
who the hell am I? What
Mhm.
is anything? How do I believe? And like, I'll still have times where that sort of moment comes in every so often. I'd probably say like 3 or 4 times in my life, I've had this like, someone's like ripping a tablecloth off of the table and everything's flying everywhere. And I go, okay, well, how do I want to set this table back up
Right.
again? And I think it's a really important thing for people to do every now and then is question everything.
Yeah.
Question what you believe, why you believe it. Is this real? What's the evidence to support it? I think that's such an important thing, where it'll prevent you from getting too caught up in identifying your ego with something else again.
Mhm.
Right. And that was one of the things that I learned from kind of moving away from my Christian faith, was to never believe in anything 110% like I
Mhm.
did. I was hook, line, and sinker, like, this is the only truth and this is the only way. And it was not great,
Mm.
because there were things that I couldn't see or experience because of that.
Right.
And once I had that sort of veil lifted from my eyes moment where I was like, well, maybe this isn't the truth, capital T truth.
Right.
Maybe there's something more. Maybe there's a different way that it expresses itself.
Mm.
The moment that that happened, it was literally like someone lifted a veil off my face, like a physical sensation of like
Wow.
opening up and recognition. And I feel like that is something I've always wanted to maintain,
Mhm.
that willingness to be flexible with my understanding, letting my experiences teach me, rather than trying to decide something is just this way. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, no, and I have full body chills as you're talking about that too. I love that you mentioned that. For those listening, as I mentioned, Michael's a medium, very much so, very, very good at what he does, very connected. But you are probably like one of the most skeptical mediums. Like you you've shared a bit of your personal story in class and whatnot, and I think that um, yeah, if you want to touch on that a little bit, just how you are very skeptical of this, or were at least, in a way, which I think is very healthy. It's very healthy because it's easy to get taken away, for lack of a better word, and forget that we're human, and become. It's so important to stay grounded and rooted in our bodies, and that's something that can be challenging when a person goes through an intense awakening. Like I know I went through with my dark night of the soul. I went through an intense awakening at the same time, and I kind of got swept up off into the air for a while. And because I experienced that, I can see how easy it is for that to happen, especially when you're going through such an intense transformation, when it kind of happens in a very condensed amount of time. And I know for me personally, I believe that the world is going through shift right now. I personally believe that a lot of people are awakening at this time. And I just know through my experience, how I kind of got swept up, off, and away. That's something that I don't want other people to experience. I mean, hey, if you experience it, it's a part of your path. But I understand the importance of being so rooted and grounded because of kind of I had to go up and I had to find my way back down, and I'm grateful that I did. Um, but I guess with that said, I feel like a lot of people are going to be going through these intense awakenings. That's something that I feel very strongly, and I just think it's so important to get this out there for people who might be going through this, to understand the importance of being grounded. So if you want to speak of that, if you want to speak of your skepticism, how that evolved for you.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I was very very intensely religious and Christian, born again, all that sort of thing. Studied my Bible, did all that sort of thing, and was so sold hook, line, and sinker that this was the truth, the way, the life, all that. And coming out of that puts on my skeptic hat, right? Where I'm going, okay, now I have to be a little bit more careful that I don't just sort of swallow whatever I experience. Well, where did I stumble into? I stumbled into mediumship, and right thereafter into the new age sort of world. And I actually worked at a metaphysical shop called Awakenings in Laguna Hills, California. And I worked there for 12 years, actually, on and off for 12 years. And uh, with that environment, it gave me an opportunity to experience everything, everything. We had a classroom in that space where people would come in and rent the space and do their things, and workshops and all that sort of thing. So I got a chance to see so many claims of this is what I do, quote
Mm,
unquote, and the claims that this is what happens if you do XYZ. And I have to be honest and say that like 96, 97% of it was nothing, was just
mm,
crap,
mm,
and proved to be nothing. And I jumped into each and every one of these things
mm,
to try to see, is there value here? Is there value here? Is there
mm,
value here? And it just kept running up on no.
mm,
And it really confused me at the time, because there would be all these people around me that are like, oh, well, you just don't believe enough, or oh, well, you just don't, you're too skeptical in your mind, and that's why you don't experience these things. And maybe to some degree they might have been right, but the reality was that none of those things really, I never saw any true growth. I mean,
mhm,
people would be going through all these processes and all of these things, and then they'd come out to the other side, and then the next week they'd be doing the same exact thing, and then many years later still dealing with the same things. And I'm kind of sitting here being like, well, then what is actually working? Is any of this actually working? All of these different things that you guys are doing, is this making a change in any real demonstrative way? And when I didn't see that happening,
Mm-hmm.
it made me kind of really go, "Ugh," so many
Yeah.
people say all these things are possible, and then they're not happening.
Can I ask you a quick question just to clarify
Mm,
what you're saying? You're talking about when you're saying you didn't see value in these things or you didn't see growth. Are you talking about like growth within a person or?
yes.
Okay, I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify the type of growth you were talking about.
Yeah, because what I actually got to see was a ton of spiritual bypassing.
Yes.
A ton of
Oh,
spiritual bypassing where
mm,
it's always people claiming to have, um, these breakthroughs and all these things,
mm,
and then their personality, their core issues never addressed.
mm,
And not only are they never addressed, they actually are like empowering themselves even
mm.
more into their ego.
Right.
like
Yeah.
like they're attaching themselves to all these other things that
Mhm,
are outside of themselves. And one of
mhm,
the biggest things I learned is that the things that really work are simple.
mhm.
They're incredibly basic and they're incredibly simple, and they don't have to be the elaborate sort of extra stuff. And I have found that keeping things simple and doing the uncomfortable work
Yeah.
is actually where it's at, rather than like doing these sort of quote unquote spiritual exercises and things like that. Now, that may not sit well with a lot of people because, I don't know what your audience is, but my guess is that some of them might be finding themselves in that similar space. And here's the thing. I got to experience all of that for like 12 years. I
Mhm,
didn't really dive back into my mediumship, even though that was the thing that opened the door. I didn't dive back into it for probably like 4 or 5 years
mhm,
into my journey. And
mhm.
then once I really got serious and dove back into developing that, what I discovered is that for me, it was having something evidential and something that like gave returns that
Mhm.
showed me what was true, what was the pathway forward, rather than allowing myself to play at something.
Yeah.
The evidence spoke for it.
Right.
And I think when you have really strong evidence,
Mhm.
that tends to move you in a direction that keeps you grounded, that keeps
Yeah.
you, in a clear and solid space. I don't know
Mhm.
if I made any sense there, but hopefully I
No,
did.
you totally did, and I appreciate you bringing that forward because I am a little woo woo. I'm probably more woo woo than you are. I don't personally like to associate myself with New Age spirituality because to me it's its own religion, and I see truth in all religions. So there are things within New Age spirituality that I do resonate with, but the way things are talked about sometimes I really don't resonate with. I'm like, oh, it's the truth that has been skewed, similar to religion, in my opinion. And
Totally.
through my experience, like with my, talking about my like big awakening and this and that, I fell into, so I know when you're saying it like feeds a person's ego more, I kind of like that happened to me. So I understand what you're saying. It's like tapping into these other things that are like outside of you. And through my experience, what I came to realize, and this is based on my belief, a lot of these things are real. However, like as you awaken, there's things that and it's different for every single person. For me, there's things that I was able to experience that I wasn't able to experience before, but without doing the proper healing work alongside of it, like the genuine healing work, it can turn into a nightmare, for lack of a better word. Like you said, like it
Yeah.
really, without being rooted and grounded, it can really feed your ego in a very toxic way because it's like for me, there was things I truly believed, like genuinely believed to be true. And in hindsight, after a, tower moment, because through my journey, thank God I was always asking for help. Like I genuinely would ask for help every day. I was like, help me stay rooted in the heart space. And I feel like if I didn't ask for help, who knows? Because spirit, they put experiences in my life to kind of knock me down, which I needed. And through all of these experiences, I realized, oh my gosh, the true path is the healing path. It's the healing path, and it's becoming, it's coming home to self. It's, stepping into your authenticity, and it's not, no spiritual bypassing this and that. And I think where a lot of like the problem lies is a lot of people, when they start to experience an awakening, because I understand kind of both sides in a way, because I know when you start to experience these other things, it's very real, but we haven't been taught how to heal. And it's like this confusing, I don't know if I'm articulating that right, but it's like two worlds, and they need to come together, if that makes sense. Like I feel like when it comes to spirituality and, these outside things, whatever it may be, I don't believe all the things, like I want to say that, like I'm just talking based on my experience here, but staying rooted and healing is the most important thing. It's the most important thing, because if you're not growing as a person, like you said, then you're just going to be feeding your ego more, and it's going to put more of a blindfold on. And I feel like that's why a lot of people develop, a god complex and that sort of a thing. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, and I believe that a lot of people who have developed these god complexes, or whatever you want to say it, they're not aware of it. It's like they're genuinely not aware. Anyways, I don't know if that really made sense, but I appreciate you
No, it does.
bringing that up, because yeah.
For sure. Well, and here's what I want to say. Even if someone is going through those kinds of things, there actually is no wrong path here. There is no wrong way. So, something I was trying to get at before is I've been in this world for 18 years, right?
Mm,
In some capacity in this world for 18 years of spiritual work and things. And one thing I have to say is that I am so grateful for every single experience that I had, and some of them were incredibly challenging.
mm,
Um, I'm grateful for the times that I was in my little delusional state where I thought everything was magic and everything was, you know, I guess more magical in a fantasy way than it was in reality. And honestly, the reality is far more magical than anything else. But
mm,
um, I'm grateful for every experience that I had. One, because it helped me become a better teacher for people.
mm.
Because I now have seen people I've run into all the problems that I help my students with,
Right.
right? Second, I'm grateful for all those experiences because each and every one of them showed me a truth, right? They
Mm,
showed me something.
mm,
So as I sit here and tell you, 95% of the things that I experienced were not true, I know that because of personal experience. I know that because I actually did it and I
right.
went through it and I
Right.
did all of those things. If I hadn't, I would just be regurgitating
Right.
that fact, right? Or
Right.
that experience. And I think the other vantage thing that I have here is 18 years, right? So
Yeah.
I can see the journey of what happens to someone
Yeah.
in their spiritual awakening, in their
Mm,
spiritual development, and not to mention having seen over those 18 years other people and their experiences and their spiritual journey.
right.
And so I think for for anyone at any stage of wherever they are, it's good.
Yeah.
Be happy that you're there because
Yeah.
you're going to take something from every freaking
Mm,
experience you have, whether it's quote unquote moving you forward or not,
mm,
you will learn. And ultimately, that's the most important thing is that you're learning.
right.
And sometimes we have to have some really challenging experiences to learn these really important lessons. And
Yeah.
maybe you have egg on your face at the end of it, right? Maybe you're embarrassed. Maybe you're like, shit, I can't believe I used to say and do those things.
Yeah.
Like I have those, trust me. I
Yeah.
have plenty of things where I'm like, thank God social media wasn't what it was when I started all of this stuff because oh no, there'd be a whole record of it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I point that out just because I want everyone to know that like wherever you are is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let other people throw you or judge you or whatever.
Mm,
Your experiences are important.
mm,
And the one thing I will say is do your best to minimize any harm. That's the
mm,
one thing I will say is as long as you aren't harming anyone or yourself,
mm-hmm.
then whatever personal experience that you're going through, good.
Mm,
Good. It's supposed to be difficult. It's
yeah.
supposed to be challenging.
Right.
And that's not to say it always has to stay that way, but we have the seasons of our lives where we fall into a season, we experience whatever we need to experience, and then we move out of it. And then we have a
Yeah.
freaking summertime, right? So
Yeah.
recognize that there are ebbs and flows to your spiritual journey.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is just be willing to question.
Yeah.
Be willing to question, because try not to just hold on to anything too tightly,
Mhm.
because that will always leave you open to critical thinking, and that critical thinking will help you to find truth. And I think that's many of us are searching for that
Yeah.
objective truth, and I do think that there is some component to objective truth. My current hypothesis is that it's based in love. So
Mm.
whatever that truth is, we know that that's a big component of it, and it's
Yes.
this relationship to and from that love.
Mm.
And that's, I would say, one piece that I feel quite solid about.
Mhm.
Pretty much everything else after that is kind of
Mm.
up for debate.
Yeah. No, and I love that you say that too. That's something that I always love to preach is, our soul is love. Truth is rooted in love. If it's something that's, more fear-based or something that's not rooted in love, that's where, like you said, it's up for debate. Like, is there truth to it? Love is true. We know that love is true. Only love is true. So, yeah, no, I love that. Hey guys, we are super excited to announce the launch of something new. We will be launching something called a community on a platform called School. That's SKOOL. It's similar to a Patreon, but better. It's a platform for learning and, well, community. Basically, it will give you access to exclusive content from both Holly and I. Holly is a certified holistic health coach, and she is also a certified embodiment coach. I have a degree in kinesiology and received a certification in personal training. I also am an advancing student in mediumship development and have been channeling spirit for as long as I can remember. Through our own experience and journeys, as well as our knowledge gained through education, we will be curating content to specifically aid in your journeys back home to self. This will include monthly guided meditations, guided embodiment practices, pick-a-card readings, energy healing, guided workouts, and healthy recipes. It will also include important teachings to help you become the most embodied version of yourself. Some topics will include how to connect with your intuition, how to tap into the psychic within you, how to heal your inner child, how to face and understand your ego, how to heal your relationship with your body and food, and more. This platform will also allow for conversation and connection with others who are also part of the community, giving you the opportunity to potentially meet other like-minded individuals who are also on the path of becoming the best versions of themselves. This path is not easy and at times can be isolating. We are not supposed to do this alone. Community is so healing and so important, so we hope this will provide support for you regardless of where you might be on your journey. It's only $22.22 a month, where you will have unlimited access to all of the content as well as the new content rolled out monthly. It will also give you a $10 discount on our monthly healing circles. Holly and I both struggled with self-image, self-confidence, knowing our self-worth, and knowing what it means to truly love ourselves majority of our lives. The truth is that we are not taught how to properly love ourselves in this day and age, and we are on a mission to make change. We owe it to the future generations to come. We believe that it is important to love your mind, body, and spirit cohesively in order to truly step into the highest, most authentic version of yourself. We hope to see you there, honey. So I would love to talk about I don't want to say some fun things, as though what we were talking about before wasn't fun. But, talking about healing and stuff is really important. And thank you for your wisdom and perspective on all of that. I would love to hear a little bit about maybe some of the other fun things that you're doing. I know you mentioned to me like psychic work, missing persons cases. Is
Yeah.
that something that you do? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's something I've been working on and developing. So a long time ago, I had watched this show where they were using
Mm.
psychics to help find people. And I was like, man, I really want to
Mhm.
like try that and learn. And I remember someone on there, I ended up actually
Mm.
getting a reading with them. because they did so well on the show. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to get a reading. And I also want to
Mhm.
find out if they can teach me
Mhm.
how they do what they do. I got a reading and it was not
Oh,
like just
really?
not great, just not good. Yes, and then afterwards, I talked to them and I was like, "Hey, can you teach me how to do this?" And they were like, "I don't know how I do it." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I'm like, "Great." So not only was the reading not that great, but also, you don't know how you work or why
Interesting.
why it works for you, and which is fine. You don't have to understand it, but to me, I like to have someone who has an understanding of that because that's my personality. Um, so then my friend was like, "Hey, there's this missing persons case that's going on right now." And I was like, "Wait, don't say anything. Let me just see if I can do this." And so I basically was like, "Okay, this is who I feel it's about. This is the people involved." Da, da, da. She's like, "Yes, yes, yes." And I'm like, and da, 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 da. And I just kept going, like just went straight into it. Started naming
Wow.
places, um, and where they had gone and what had happened, and actually some things I gave because it was an active case at the time. I gave to my friend. She didn't know, and later
Wow.
came out to be true. And so it was like really, really strong. And we ended up
Wow.
doing three that night. Because then we just pulled up some other ones. And what was crazy is that on one of them, I was like, okay, I know there's this place where the body was found. I just need to have a map. Now,
Mm,
granted, she tells me nothing. I
mm,
don't know where in the world
mhm,
this is. I don't know anything. And I pull up a map and I just take my finger and
mm.
I run it over the world. And I felt like it was
Yeah.
in the United States, so at least I had that. And I literally found a point where like I just felt my finger tingle and I
Mm,
just put my finger down. And then we zoomed in on where my finger went and it was the exact like river or like
wow.
trailhead or something like that named in the
Wow.
article of where the bodies were found. And I was like,
Wow.
"What? This is insane." So like it was crazy. Like in the whole world, I went
Right
boop
there.
and it was the exact river. It's just crazy. So for
Mm,
me, I was like, wow, that's insane. So what I've been doing ever since is practicing getting good at
mhm.
it so that one day I might be
Wow.
able to
Yeah.
use this to help other people. Because my thought was like, okay, if I can
Yeah.
talk to people after death and I can do all these psychic things after death, is there any way I can try to do something to help something
Right.
bad from happening to begin with, or solving or bringing, healing to
Right.
people in a different way? So yeah, I've been
Wow.
working and playing with that, and it's a
Wow.
really
I
fun
had
exercise
full body
to do.
chills as you were talking about like the thing where, when you pointed to the exact location, that's it sound like that's crazy in such a yeah, like I mean, obviously I believe it, but it's like spirit never ceases to amaze me. This work never ceases to amaze me. Um I think that's super interesting and I am excited to hopefully one day see a world where, law enforcement and whatnot is more so open to working with this other world as well. I understand why, law enforcement and whatnot, they're hesitant to work with psychics and mediums, because unfortunately there are people in this work that are not in integrity. And that's where, it can make it difficult for people who are in integrity. But I think that's really interesting that you're working on that sort of a thing. Were you always like into crime when you were younger? Is that something that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I mean, I definitely have always had an
Mhm.
interest in true
Same.
crime
So
and that sort of thing.
yeah, just curious. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, my mom, we grew up, my mom watching unsolved mysteries and things like that. So like forever, I've always had that in the background. But to speak really quickly
Mhm.
on the police and like why they are hesitant. They do work with psychics and mediums and things like that. But here's the thing. Number one, you will not get any information from them, and they can't tell you whether
Mhm.
you're right or wrong and all of that sort of thing. Because they can't give you anything. You just give them the
Right.
information and they do something with it. But secondly, it's also that anything that's given has to be able to produce evidence. So I can tell them things till the cows come home
Right.
about what happened and when and all that sort
Mm.
of thing and give them a timeline or whatever. But unless I can point to here's where the gun is that's going to
Right.
incriminate this person,
Yeah.
there's not really any value.
Right.
They need to be able to get evidence.
Right.
And so I think that's also maybe
Mm.
another reason why they might be a little bit like, okay, well, can you give me evidence, something I can actually prosecute on, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense too because yeah, they that makes sense. They need the evidence and that's difficult, right? If you're reading the energy and you have an idea for people involved, the story, they can do nothing with that unless there's the smoking gun, for lack of
Concrete
a word.
evidence. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Which is similar to like the type of mediumship that you teach.
Yep.
Yeah, if you want to talk about your teaching or anything along those lines at all.
Yeah, I mean, you guys got to hear a little bit of kind of my story and kind of facing a lot of I don't know, lack of a better word, things that didn't feel like they were providing proof and evidence. And thankfully, mediumship rolled much more strongly back into my life. And with that spiritualism, which was really helpful. Now, I have my qualms with spiritualism as well, but there's some things in the history of this that really validate and provide the quality evidence that I would want if I were to continue to develop. And so during that time period, I really got into okay, the evidence-based approach to any
Mm,
work with this because it's if I can't use what actually comes out of the work that I do, what am I
mhm,
doing? Just like kind of playing at something. So for me, it's been very useful to focus in on evidence-based approach, which is why I wrote my book, Spirit Speaks, which is an evidence-based approach to genuine spirit
mhm,
communication. Um, so that I could hand it to someone and be like, here are all the foundational things that you need to
mhm,
know. Um, and then on top of that, with the school, Oakbridge Institute, we did that so that we could provide a high quality education for people because out there in the spiritual world, from my experience these last 18 years, it's sort of a wild, wild west almost. Like if you just have an
yeah,
opinion and you just have
yeah,
a thought and like, then you can just put it
yeah,
out there. Really, my biggest thing was reduction of harm. Reduction of harm on people who end up receiving
yeah,
readings, as well as reduction of harm to
mm,
students. Because I don't know, Brittany, how many different teachers you've worked with, but there's a lot of teachers out there who let their
mm,
ego and their sort of insecurities and all their issues kind of be projected onto the
yeah,
students. And then you end up seeing like some genuinely
mm,
abusive, like situations where people are taken
mhm,
advantage of or made to feel less than and all these
yeah,
sorts of things. So we really want to just create a safe
yeah,
haven, safe, loving, compassionate, warm
mhm,
environment where people can feel okay and safe to be
yeah,
vulnerable and develop their
yeah.
ability. And that's what we tried to do with
Yeah, and
Oakbridge.
for those listening, just I want to give an example of evidence-based mediumship, what that means. Just because when I started development, I didn't know, like I didn't know what that meant. It's when you're connecting with a past loved one, you're bringing through evidence. So the sitter, so the person you're doing the reading for, so they have an understanding of who you're communicating with. You're not just saying, "Oh, your grandpa's here and he has this to say." It's more so giving evidence based on who the person is in spirit so that the person you're giving a reading to is like, oh yeah, I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but it's like you know that you're actually communicating with someone who has passed as opposed to just the medium telling you things based out of like nothing, you know?
Yeah. So basically, with evidence, it's facts and information that you can validate, that you know about this person, so that when you go see an evidential medium, you should be able to go, yes, his birthday was November 3rd.
Mhm,
Yes, he did work at a sawmill. Yes,
mhm,
did have 14 kids. Right, like he did die of cancer. These are very factual things about this person, as well as personal information that is factual. Like, yes, he used to always walk around with keys jingling in his pocket. And that's how I always recognized him, right? So there's these things that we can help to identify. And then we go to the message of like,
mm,
here's what they want to tell you so
mhm.
that you know you can trust the information that's coming through.
Yeah, and you and Megan are the only teachers that I've worked with in this realm of things, and I'm really grateful for that. I feel like Spirit put you guys on my path at the perfect time. They were like, "Doop, this is who you know work with," and I'm still in development with you guys. And if you're listening beginning, I highly, if you're interested in development in any way, another misconception, and this was a belief that I had as well. Like, I thought that mediums were just born and they knew what they were doing, like out of the womb, just like talking to dead people.
Yeah.
I had no idea that it's really something that we all have the ability to tune into to a certain degree. We are all spirit first. And that's something I really learned through Megan and Michael, and it really helped me understand, I guess, these things, these sensations that I felt that I just thought were normal, I guess are normal to a certain extent, but didn't really know what it was. So I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, just how like there's such a misconception about like mediums just knowing how to medium, you know?
I love that. Yeah, so that's very, very accurate. I think back in the day, that was a much more thought of thing that mediums were just born and you because there wasn't places for you to learn and develop. So of course you're only going to understand what you're exposed to. But as time has gone on, we've come to really show that mediumship is natural. It is something that anyone can do. And I think back in the day too, there was this sort of like making the medium special, so to
Mhm.
speak.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of not down for that. I'm a little bit of that person that's like, nope, everybody's special. So therefore, like we all can do these things.
Mhm.
Like I try to do whatever I can to like not let the ego attach itself to anything too
Right.
much, especially within mediumship, because
Mhm.
there is nothing more delicious smelling to the ego than someone telling you, "Oh my god, you're amazing. You
Mhm.
changed my life. You XYZ,"
Yeah.
right? Like you did this amazing thing. And then we sort of get these like little followings and things like
Mm.
that. And all of that stuff is perfume for your ego.
Yeah.
It's like, oh hell yeah. Because who wouldn't want to feel good about
Yeah.
themselves because
Yeah.
they changed someone's life?
Yeah.
But I think one of the best things you can do with regards to that is recognize that you're in a partnership between you and the
Mm.
spirit world. And without the spirit world, none of
Mm.
this would happen.
Mm.
None of it. So you would need to rely on them.
Mhm.
Your job as a medium or even a psychic really is get the hell out of the way.
Yeah.
That's your job.
Yes, and that's the hardest part.
Mhm.
It's hard to get
So
out of the way.
that is because especially if we're controlling or
Mhm.
we have any part we're never taught how to be passive
Mhm.
and receptive. We're always taught how to do and be active and all that sort of thing, which is probably why we end up associating that this is me and I'm somehow special like
Mhm.
this. But no, it's actually them doing it. If the more that you can lean into the fact that it's them doing it, not
Mhm.
you, it's so easy to stay humble.
Mhm. Yeah.
So easy to stay humble.
And I love that you bring that up. To me, the way I view it, it's kind of like anything in a way. Like, we all have the ability to a certain degree to learn how to play soccer, for example. Some people are going to be naturally really good at it. Other people are going to work really hard at it. And because they work really hard, they're going to be good at it. Other people are going to be like, soccer's stupid. I want nothing to do with it. And other people are going to have the natural ability. Plus, they're going to work really hard. And those people get to the professional level. So when it comes to mediumship, like, I do believe there are people that maybe have more of a natural ability, but it's probably because that's what they signed up here to do. That's what their soul signed up here to do. They probably have a passion for it as well, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're more special than anybody else. It's simply their path, just like somebody who plays soccer who gets to a professional level, or not even a professional level, maybe they become a spokesperson for it. There's a passion there, so it's more natural to them, and that's I also like, when you were talking about, I laughed when you said delicious smelling to the ego. That just, that had me laughing. Perfume to the ego. I love that. Um, but one thing that I really needed to learn, through my journey is I really, and this applies to mediumship as well, actually, is just remaining very neutral when a person says anything to me, whether it be a compliment
Mhm.
or something that's not so nice. It's not letting the positive comments feed my ego while not letting the negative comments tear me down. It's remaining neutral. It's acknowledging, you can acknowledge both the positive and the negative, because maybe there's something for you to look at in more of a critical, comment. Or maybe it's, sometimes it is nice to have somebody say something nice to you, but it's really remaining neutral and um not letting it feed or take away from who you are. Like your sense of confidence needs to come from within. And that's been a journey for me, something that I've really been working on, especially, with social media these days, people who are just online, anybody who's online, it can be really easy to fall into that trap of, wanting to get a certain amount of likes or comments or, and really basing your worth on those outside things.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think that's a really important piece that you mentioned as well.
Absolutely, and I do think it is more difficult, nowadays because there is a component of you that if you're going to do this work, that on some level does require being out there and in the public and being seen,
Mm,
and you're already kind of a target being a medium to begin with,
yeah.
because people don't believe in this and they think you're just frauding people,
Yeah.
and they're probably right. Honestly, if I hadn't had the experiences that I've had,
Mm,
I'd probably think the same thing.
yeah.
So without that, I would probably think those same things. So yeah, it is about taking, the compliments, the praise, and the criticism with equal measure,
Mm,
with just letting it be what it is.
mhm,
Um, and I do think that that is probably the solution, to preventing yourself from getting too caught up in
mhm.
any of it. It's really, you can't make your spirituality about something outside of yourself.
Yeah.
So whether that's
Yeah.
how well my reading is going,
Mm,
whether that's, what I've been able to accomplish with my social media, whatever, you can't make it
mm,
outside of yourself because you're going to end up feeling super empty.
mhm.
It's not gonna be personal. It's
Mm,
going to be this thing that is, like, driving you, even doing this work as a career, as a job, can sometimes feel like a job,
yeah.
and that anytime I start to feel that, I always take a break from what I'm doing,
Mm,
because I never want my spirituality, which is something that has driven me since I was a child,
mhm.
to feel like work, because it takes all the joy and the happiness and the love and the peace that you get from where developing your spiritual awareness, out of it.
Right.
And so, having to be very conscious of your limits, your
Yeah.
boundaries, your caretaking of yourself so that when you need to take a break. And Brittany, I've seen you do that. I've seen you be like, I
Mm,
need to take a step back from these things, or I need a
yeah.
little moment. And I think it's so powerful. It's so important for you to be able to recognize, like, okay. And sometimes you have to like fall on your face super hard to learn where that boundary is. I know I did. I used to work 12-hour days,
Mhm.
12-hour days. And then I got so burnt out that I literally couldn't read anymore. And
Mm.
I was like, maybe I should not do that.
Yeah. It's
you
a
know?
it's a lot. When I first started, I was doing really long days too, and now, like, 2 to 3 readings a day or 3 to 4
Yeah.
times a week tops, like,
Yeah.
not more
For
than
sure.
that. So I totally hear you.
We're interrupting this episode to share something close to our hearts, our virtual healing circles. We have been loving them so much and meeting so many of you incredible people through them. Brittany and I are passionate about bringing people together to support one another and heal in community. We felt alone on our paths for so long, and coming together in community has been instrumental to our growth, and we've both seen the importance in it. We aren't meant to do this alone. In unity and vulnerability, we find strength, courage, and support each other on our paths back to ourselves. Our monthly virtual seminars blend discussions, workshops, and practices to nurture your mind, body, and spirit. Whether seeking guidance, healing, or a listening ear, our gatherings offer a safe, inclusive space for people to connect, heal, and grow. Join us on this journey of healing in community. Together we can heal, grow, and thrive. Register for the next circle using the link in the show notes. We hope to see you there.
And one thing too, like off what you were saying is, a lot of people ask me like, how do I develop my gifts? How do I this? And I'm like, it's less about developing your gifts and more about developing you. The more you come home to yourself, the more you learn about yourself, the more you embark on your healing journey, naturally, based on my experience, your quote unquote gifts, which we all have, naturally open up because you're going to be more in tune with you. You're going to know who you are. You're going to understand your energy more versus what's not your energy. So it's less about, like you said, those outside things and more about the inside things. And again, we're not taught that, but I'm looking at the time here and I'm noticing we have a few minutes left. So I want to leave you the floor. If there is anything else that you wanted to talk about, anything else you wanted to mention.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure when this does come out. Developing your mediumship, if that's something that you're interested in. We do Oakbridge Institute. Brittany is a product of that as well. And so come on out and check it out. And then if anyone wants to work with me, you can do so at mediummichaelmayo.com, as well as my book, which is Spirit Speaks. You can get that on Amazon if you want, or llewellyn.com.
Thank you so much. And yeah, for those listening, I highly recommend taking development courses if that's something you're interested in. It really was a game changer for me. So I would love to say that. And all of Michael's links and everything where you can find him will be in the show notes in the description box below. So definitely go give him a follow. And thank you again so much, Michael, for your time today. I know I got something out of it. I'm sure that the audience got something out of it. And it's just always a pleasure to have conversation with you. So, yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for those listening. And until next time, we will see you next Wednesday. Bye.
Bye.
As we wrap up today's episode, we want to extend our deepest gratitude for joining us on this journey. Your support does not go unnoticed. If you enjoyed this episode and find value in our conversations, please take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback not only helps us grow, but also allows us to reach more people who can benefit from our community of healing and support. Every review, every rating makes a difference. Thank you for being a part of the Multiple Truths podcast family. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Multiple Truths podcast. Keep speaking your truth and spreading your light. We love you, and we'll talk to you next Wednesday.